What happens when the thing high performers sacrifice first turns out to be the very thing costing them everything? Devin Burke has built his life's work around a problem millions of people quietly normalize: exhaustion. Not the kind you post about, the kind that reshapes your mood, your decisions, your ambition, and eventually your identity. As the founder of Sleep Science Academy, Devin has become one of the most trusted voices, helping exhausted insomniacs, entrepreneurs, and high achievers restore their natural ability to sleep through a science-backed, medication-free, holistic approach. He's a best-selling author, TEDx speaker, and was named one of the top 25 health coaches in America. His book, The Sleep Advantage, has helped bring the conversation around sleep out of the wellness fringe and into the center of performance, leadership, and everyday life. What makes Devin so compelling is that he doesn't talk about sleep like a luxury. He talks about it like leverage, like the hidden force behind energy, focus, emotional steadiness, relationships, and the quality of the life you're building. In a world addicted to pushing through, he asks a more uncomfortable question. What if the life you want doesn't require more effort, but instead deeper recovery? And before we start the episode, a quick word from our sponsor, Deep Wealth and the Deep Wealth Mastery Program. Here's Sanjay, a graduate of Deep Wealth Mastery, and he says, the investment I made in the Deep Wealth Mastery Program, it's a rounding error compared to the value created today and the future value I'll receive. Or how about William, who says, and I love this, a company that's attractive to sell is also a great one to own. The Deep Wealth Mastery Program gives me the best of both worlds. Now, speaking of growth and adding value, check out what Leon says. He says that the Deep Wealth Mastery Program changed how and who we hire. We've now begun to hire talent today that we never would have hired if it weren't for the program. The talent we're hiring today is helping both increase our growth and profits and our future enterprise value. Man, I love that kind of feedback because it's that kind of feedback that's what gets me out of bed every day. Deep Wealth Mastery System, it's the only system based on a 9-figure deal. That was my deal. And as you know, I said no to a 7-figure offer, created a system that we now call Deep Wealth Mastery. And that's what helped myself and my business partners welcome from a different buyer, a different offer, a 9-figure deal. So if you're interested in growing your profits, preparing for a future liquidity event, whether that's 2 years away or 22 years away, and if you want to optimize your post-exit life, Deep Wealth Mastery is for you. Please email success@deepwealth.com. Again, that's success, SUCCESS, at deepwealth.com. We'll send you all the information about Deep Wealth Mastery, otherwise known as the Scale for Ultimate Sales System. That's where you want to be. You want to be with other successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and founders just like you who are looking to create market disruptions. Whether you're a startup, whether you've been in business for 3 or 4 decades, whether you're manufacturing, whether you're high-tech, SaaS, low-tech, whatever the case may be, come in and network with other business owners, with other businesses just like you, because they all want to lock in their financial freedom and enjoy both success and fulfillment. Again, that's the 90-day Deep Wealth Mastery Program. It has your name on it. All you need to do is take the next step. Please send an email to success@deepwealth.com. Deep Wealth Nation, welcome to another episode of the Deep Wealth Podcast. Well, Deep Wealth Nation, let me ask you a question. How was your sleep? Really, how was it? And chances are you can fill in the explicitives. Jeffrey, it was fill in the blank. Probably not great, and I'm being polite. Well, if you're like so many founders, you're probably burning the candle at both ends, and you may not realize you're doing more damage, not only to your health, but to your profits and to your business. So what do you do? What does it look like? Where can you turn? Stop your search. You've come to the right place. You heard the official introduction. We have a fellow founder in the House of Deep Wealth, and not only is he on the Deep Wealth Podcast, you've probably heard him on Fox News, all the major networks. He is doing some incredible things out there when it comes to sleep and sleep health. So Devin, welcome to Deep Wealth Podcast. There is always a story behind the story, and you've got quite the story. What's your story, my friend? What got you from where you were to where you are today?
Jeffrey, well, first and foremost, thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation. I'm going to give you the quick version of a very long story. I'm sure you probably heard that many times from your guests, but I'm going to start in college. I actually thought I was going to be a doctor of physical therapy, and I took a 2.5-month backpack trip through Europe, really thinking about my life, what I wanted, why I was here. I had the space to finally really sit down and ask some deeper questions and realized, that I didn't want to be a doctor of physical therapy. So I was sitting there on the beach praying to God, what do I do? I got accepted to Nova Southeastern's university's PT program. Worked so hard all my life. This is what I was set on doing. And then I just had this revelation that I was being called to do something different. So I didn't know what that was. Shorter version of a much longer story. I found someone who's doing health coaching. This was about 20 years ago, actually. And they started to share with me what they were learning, how they were helping people. And I said, wow, you can make money teaching people about their health, about their nutrition, about their lifestyle, it wasn't so much about sleep at this point. And so back to school, got a certification in health coaching. It was almost a 2-year program that I went back to school for. And I started my business. And I really didn't know what I was doing at all, besides having a big dream to help as many people as possible. And as I started to coach people, I started to attract a lot of high performing business owners, entrepreneurs, people that were running companies, founders. For whatever reason, I was helping them with their health and lifestyle. And then that became my practice. And what I realized is that most of these founders and entrepreneurs, they were eating right, they were exercising, they were taking really good care of themselves, and they weren't sleeping. And it was one particular client that was really struggling. He didn't want to be on the sleeping pills. He's like, Devin, help me. What can I do? I don't want to be on sleeping pills. Is there something that I'm missing? And at that point, honestly, I took sleep for granted. I didn't really realize that it's the foundation of health. And so I said, well, let me look into this. Looked into it and realized, wow, there's not a lot of good solutions for people. There's sleep apnea, sleep tests, there's CBTI, which I saw the value in some of that methodology, but I also saw a lot of holes that needed to be filled to really help people, and sleeping medication. So started to get intrigued, started to read all the books, got a couple certifications in sleep, started to experiment with what I was learning, and started to get some results. And then the more results I got, the more clients I got asking me, hey, help me with my sleep. And then finally, I developed a system around it. This took about 2 years of trying different techniques, different tools, different frameworks, different mindsets. And that turned into Sleep Science Academy. And at this point, we've helped over 2,000 people across the country from ages 14 to 92 reestablish healthy, natural sleep without medication in 8 weeks or less. That's kind of what leads me up to today, what we're doing at Sleep Science Academy, and being on the call with you.
In Table Nation, a few things. Devin is so modest. He's been named one of the top 25 health coaches in America. He has this incredible book. Please go to the show notes and pick it up. The Sleep Advantage, optimize your night to win your day. And all the resources that we're talking about today will be in the show notes. So Devin, let's take a step back before we talk about what you're doing in the Sleep Science Academy, these incredible results. Most founders go to their doctor. Yeah, doc, not the best sleep. I'm feeling off. Past little while, what should I do? And it's getting better, I suspect. But for a lot of doctors, okay, yeah, here's a script. Go take this pill. Life is great. But is it? So what's going on behind the prescriptions and the medications? Why is that a no-fly zone?
Yeah, it's a huge no-fly zone. I mean, first and foremost, I'm not anti-medication, and this isn't medical advice. But if you look at the inserts of any of the medications that your doctor prescribes to you, if you go and share with them that you're really struggling with your sleep, they're meant to be taken for a couple of weeks. And most people stay on them for a couple of years, in some cases, decades. They have very strong side effects, very strong. They're linked to cancer, increase in risk of dementia, Alzheimer's. They're scary when you really look at the inserts and see the science around being on these medications long term. But above all, they're band-aids. They're not actually addressing why you're not sleeping. They're addressing the symptom of not being able to sleep. And here's a really important thing for people to realize. There's a difference between sedation and sleep. And I like to give the example, if you were walking down the road and somebody knocked you over the head and you were knocked out, and then they picked you up and they put you in your bed, they covered you up, and somebody else walked in, they might think that you were peacefully asleep, but you're not asleep, you're knocked out. And that's what these medications do. They knock you out. You're not actually getting into the deeper stages of REM sleep, of deep sleep, where your mind is restoring itself. And that's why a lot of times, even when you're taking a sleeping medication and you're getting enough sleep, you don't feel refreshed. You don't feel focused. And then there comes a time where people become addictive to these medications. They're highly addictive, not only physiologically, but psychologically, because you're putting your trust in something outside of your body's natural ability to do this thing called sleep, something we're born knowing how to do. And so it's a billion-dollar industry, multi-billion-dollar industry. And unfortunately, more people are taking these medications because they don't know where to turn. And when you are not sleeping and you're not sleeping well, and that's been going on for a couple of weeks, months, or years, really you'll do just about anything to get a resemblance of a little bit of sleep. That's where people turn, is they turn to their doctor, and the doctors are trained to write scripts.
Again, Deprived Nation, this is not medical advice. If you have questions, if you're on these prescription meds for sleep, please speak with some medical authority who can help you. This is Devin and I having some fireside chats and just talking, two friends amongst each other. So Devin, what's interesting, what I'm hearing you say is when it comes to sleep medication, and we're speaking generally here, it's not the quantity of sleep. So yeah, you can take a sleep med and you get knocked out for 10 hours. I'm just making that up. So what? What I'm hearing you say is it's the quality of sleep, and the quality isn't there. And it actually gets to what you speak about in your book. Again, Deprived Nation, pick up the book, The Sleep Advantage, optimize your night to win your day. And not to confuse simple with simplicity, I love how you broke it down in the book. It's really 3 pillars: sleep, the missing link, mastering sleep, and supporting sleep. So sleep, the missing link. Let's begin with the foundation. What would you want us to know about something that's free? Everyone is born knowing how to sleep so well, and somehow along the way, we really bungled it up, and that's a whole other story. But what's going on? What's the missing link with sleep?
Yeah, so sleep, first and foremost, the way that I look at sleep is it's like if your sleep is off, all it is that it's an engine check light. It's your body and mind saying, hey, pay attention, something is off. And most people get very confused around what is off. Is it my nutrition? Is it my stress levels? Is it my poor sleep hygiene? What is it? We get really confused. And that makes a lot of sense, right? Because again, we're born knowing how to do this thing. And if all of a sudden we're having a hard time doing it, it becomes very confusing for most people. And where we start at Sleep Science Academy is there's really 3 impact areas. It's your mind, it's your body, and it's your environment. All 3 areas we need to address and look at to really discover, well, what has this thing called sleep that is so important for us in decision making, in discipline and motivation, in burning fat, in repair and recovery, all these amazing benefits that we get when we are sleeping well, not happening. And so how I look at it is I like to really break things down very simply. What's the most important area that needs to be addressed? Where do we look first? We look first in the mind. And what that means is, how are you thinking about sleep? How are you managing stress? How are you managing your emotions? And not just at night, but in your life. Because often we take our days into our nights and we're going from one thing to the next thing. There's no time to decompress or let the pressure valve off. And then we wonder why at night we're waking up in the middle of the night, our mind's racing, our heart's racing, and we're confused as to what's going on. Why aren't we sleeping? It's because we haven't took the foot off the gas all day long. And now the body and mind are just responding to that decision. Then we look at the body. What are we doing from a physical standpoint? Are we taking care of our body? Are we getting enough sunlight? Are we moving enough? Are we eating the right foods at the right times? Are we supporting our body in a way that allows sleep to happen? And then we look at the environment. What does your home environment look like? What does your bedroom environment look like? What areas need to be cleaned up or improved in your environment to reduce stress and increase rest? And that's kind of the framework where when we're working with a client, we kind of go through each of these 3 areas very systematically to then on the other side of that, not only know, okay, which areas need the most attention, but what to do about what comes up when we go through these impact areas.
And so before we start diving into Sleep Science Academy, I want to go back to a few things that you said, because for some people it's not so obvious. And we're speaking founder to founder now, because let's face it, as founders, it's not that we're better, it's not that we're worse. We have different kinds of lives. We live it day in, day out, you and I, and everyone who's listening in Deep Wealth Nation. And so Devin, in what you're sharing on the missing link, on the foundation of sleep, I was hearing you say things like losing weight, or having that mental clarity or that focus. And so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but my takeaway is for someone who perhaps is maybe they're gaining weight, or perhaps the business is suffering, or they're just not feeling so great, even though they're working out, they're taking all the right supplements, they're eating all the right foods. If the sleep's not there, then this may be some of the side effects. Talk to us about that because this is
Big time.
huge.
Yeah, one of the areas that we see are impacted the most, especially with founders that we work with, is decision fatigue. So not making good decisions. There's a lot of studies that actually show this, that it's similar to being intoxicated when you're not getting enough sleep or enough quality sleep. What's a little bit tricky here is that if you've ever been to a party and you see somebody that's clearly drunk and you're trying to guide them to make a good decision, and they're, oh no, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm making good decisions, but yet they're trying to get in their car and clearly they're stumbling. And this is where founders can find themselves in this situation where they're not even aware that they're making bad decisions because they're not sleeping well. They're sacrificing sleep. They're not prioritizing it. They're not protecting it. And they start to really make some very financially risky decisions. And they think that they're making good decisions. It's a tricky thing, but that's really, as far as from a cognitive standpoint, when we sleep, that's when the mind shuttles short-term memory to long-term storage. So when we're not getting into these deeper stages, specifically REM sleep, which happens mostly at the last 2 cycles, if we're getting 4 cycles of 90-minute sleep, most founders they're bookending their sleep. They're up late working. They're not drawing boundaries. They're thinking about problem solving, and they're cutting into the first 2 cycles of sleep where we get most of our deep sleep. And then they're waking up really early to do it all again. And they're cutting into the last 2 cycles, which is where we're getting most of our REM sleep. And that's the REM sleep is really important for cognitive functioning, making good decisions. The deep sleep is really important for physical restoration. So if you're finding yourself craving sugar and fat, if you're finding yourself not able to lose weight or carrying weight around your midsection, probably you're not getting enough deep sleep. If you find yourself a little foggy, not as sharp, probably you're not getting enough REM sleep, or you're cutting into those important stages of cycles of sleep. So everybody's a little bit different, but what I'm looking for, Jeffrey, is I'm always looking for patterns. What are the patterns that I see most often? And these are just some of them when we're talking specifically about founders.
Got it. Okay. And when we're going into your methodology, which we'll talk about in just a moment, but again, along with foundations, you created your own proprietary system, DSR, dynamic sleep recalibrating. So we're going to talk all about that. But again, let's fill in very high level. So you came up with this system that does wonders. It doesn't mean that we're broken and it can't be fixed. Just most people, what I'm hearing you say is don't know what to do and they go down the wrong path, and it complicates things and makes it perhaps a little bit more challenging to get back to baseline of where we are, where it's healthy. So you came along and you came up with the system. Talk to us about the early days and where you are now of, okay, I got this idea. I am one of these top coaches in America, and a lot of my clients are sleep deprived. Let me see if I can help them on the sleep side. And like you said, that led to the Sleep Science Academy, and you now have done remarkable things with it. So let's roll back the curtain. So what's going on with the Sleep Science Academy, with the system that you put together and your proprietary DSR and the technology? And I know offline you were sharing about AI and these incredible things that you've been doing behind the scenes. So what's going on there?
Yeah. So Bruce Lee has this amazing quote. He says, take what you find and take it from anywhere. That's paraphrasing a little bit, but that's pretty much was my thought in putting together what we call dynamic sleep recalibrating. Because often, specifically in psychology, this is how you do it. It's like, this is the box and you got to stay in this box. So we got to do sleep restriction and sleep hygiene if we're talking like CBTI. What I found is that if you break free from the box and you start to experiment with different methodologies, different strategies at different times. For me, I felt so blessed for people to trust me enough to be willing to experiment with some of the stuff that I was in the early days experimenting with. It was really throwing things up against the wall and saying, hey, is this going to work? If we look at it this way, if we do this at this stage with what's coming up for this person, is it helpful? Is it not helpful? So there was a lot of honestly throwing things up against the wall that made sense to me after studying this stuff and seeing, hey, what was the impact of that? And then once seeing repeated progress or understanding, then saying, okay, well, let's add that to the system. And we continually refine. And every year we're looking at our program and our process and our methodology. And really at this point, really try and distill it down, make it even more simple because it's quite comprehensive at this point after doing this for a decade. But that's how dynamic sleep recalibrating came to be, was really saying, hey, everyone is unique, but this challenge is not unique. And so let's try different things at different times and see what the impact is. And this is very strategic. Then we start to go into, well, why is this working? When we look at this before that, or we implement this tool or strategy, or somebody understands this, why does that work? And that's kind of where we are now. We have a really good understanding of why the tools, the strategies, the insights, the frameworks work. Whereas before, honestly, when I was just starting, I was just throwing stuff up against the wall and seeing what would stick and what would be helpful for people.
Absolutely. And as founders, we can relate. We get into something, oh, okay, sleep is my hidden superpower. I'm all in. And we go out there and we get the wearable tech and we're doing everything. And yet at the same time, I now have more questions than answers. And I know for so many founders, we have the same wearable. I'm not going to name names. We all know who they are and they may change over time. But I know as an example, okay, I have this wearable and I can see the sleep metrics, but what does it really mean? And more importantly, what do I do? And there's a gap. And I know that's where you come in. And so for the Sleep Science Academy, and you can say, Jeffrey, on base or off base, you're coming to the marketplace saying, okay, Jeffrey, you're unique as an individual. Yes, we have some best practices, but let's get a baseline of where you are. And if things aren't great, not to worry, we're going to figure this out. We're going to have some one-on-one coaching, but we have our system that we've worked with a gazillion other people. We know what works, what doesn't work. It's going to be medication-free. This is going to be customized to you. We're going to reset your body's sleep system, get it back to the basics here. So you're no longer having that psychological, oh my gosh, it's bedtime. What am I going to do now? And that stress that comes up. And working with you, the team, with the technology behind the scenes, you're going to help me in the shortest time possible without prescriptions, get that relishing, recharging, wonderful night of sleep again, one way or another of figuring out the root cause. How am I doing with that?
Man, you're hired, Jeffrey. You're hired. If you got some space, you're hired. That's fantastic. I couldn't have said it better myself. That is what we do. I'm glad you brought up the sleep tracking because here's the thing. We can master what we measure. And just like you measure your bank account, anything that's important to you really can be improved if you measure it. And I don't like just to guess. I want to know, right? And yes, these devices are not 100% accurate, but what they do is they give us a map. They're pretty precise. So even if they're consistently off, they're telling a story. And so we can take that story and we can look at it and say, here's a pattern. And that's really one of the big things that we do is look at pattern recognition in somebody's sleep architecture, in somebody's HRV, which is a measurement of stress. Hey, what's going on for this person? The recovery score is not good. What's going on? They need better ways of dealing with the tension, the pressure, the stress. We were actually just working with a founder. She's big company, lots of money, and she's losing her business because of the tariffs. And she's got a lot of investors, big numbers, a lot of pressure. She's not sleeping. And it's common right now because of what's going on in the world. There's a lot more stress, a lot more pressure. What she realized is really how much of what she does during the day impacts her night. So many people just want to focus on your night. But if you're not focusing on your day and all the little things that add up to you being wide awake at night, hyper aroused, stressed, cortisol being released, no pill, no supplement, no routine is going to override your body's survival system.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Let's dispel a myth right now because the myth is, okay, I'm going a gazillion miles an hour and it's now late at night and I've been up early in the morning and there's stress, there's pressure and I'm dealing with things and now family sleeping, it's emails, it's phone calls, getting ready for the next day. And now I get to bed, whatever time that is. And there's this expectation, okay, I'm in bed. Everything's great. Now I'm going to fall asleep. Right. Wow, that couldn't be further from the truth. So what's wrong with that picture? What are we missing? Because I love what you're saying. Hey, our upcoming night of sleep begins the moment we open our eyes.
That is so true. And that is such an oversight for most people, to be honest. It really is. So how you start your day dictates that level of stress. And most people start their day with a piping hot cup of coffee. And so cortisol's highest in the morning. Now we're drinking caffeine, which is like an accelerator of our cortisol. Now we're heightened stress already. And now we're going through our day. We're taking care of the fires. We're putting the fires out. We're dealing with the family. We're doing all the things we do in the day. And there's a certain level of pressure and tension that takes place in the mind and body. And if that level of tension and pressure isn't released throughout the day, there's no chance that at night, whatever you decide you think is going to relax you enough to have sleep happen, you got no shot. You have to understand that every little thing you do throughout the days is kind of either contributing to this tension and pressure or it's reducing it. And it's like, we want tension and pressure. That's life. And that's how we get things done. But how can we understand our mind-body system in a way where it's not affecting our sleep? Because stress is a part of life. We're not getting rid of stress, but we can learn how to not let the stress impact our sleep. It takes a willingness to change how you think, what you do, even your beliefs, what you believe about stress and about whatever it is that is coming up in your life.
Yeah, okay. So while you're talking about then, let's take it back for just a moment. Let's speak about Devin, the founder. Before you knew what you knew, now with the Sleep Science Academy, what changed for you life as a founder? If you look back to the earlier Devin and now to Devin present day, as a founder, living your life, growing your business, dealing with a day in, day out, what started, what stopped, perhaps what's changed the same. Walk us through some of that and the impact that it's made.
One of the biggest things that's helped me is I used to feel like I would kind of beat myself up for not getting enough done. That was a really hard thing. I feel like this is a common pattern I see with other founders. It's no matter how much you do during the day, it just never feels like it's enough because we have these big goals. I had these big goals, and until I reach those goals, it's not enough. And I realized that way of thinking and being was not serving me whatsoever. Again, I see this a lot with people we work with. It's this never giving yourself permission to rest, and rest leads to sleep. And so that was a big revelation that I had, that again, a pattern that I see in a lot of our clients and still in myself. I work through this because we could always do a little bit more. How much is enough? It's like, oh, it's a hard question to answer. And again, I think there's a time and a place for that, depending on what you're working on and where you are in life, but it's not sustainable if you want to be in it for the long haul. And it leads to burnout, and it leads to a lack of energy and a lack of perspective, which then shows up in other areas.
And so as you're talking about this, it really goes back to one of the pillars or the principles of what you and the team are doing at Sleep Science Academy, because what I'm hearing you say is, hey, Jeffrey, the mind and the body can't be treated separately. So in other words, I will just trash the body or the mind, or I'll trash the mind and all the stress and, oh, the body's going to be fine. It's not going to be affected. I'm going to go to bed at night and have a great night's sleep. What I'm hearing you say is, hey, as a founder, your thought process, your mindset, how you were approaching the day, the night, it sounds like all that had to change for you. And before we start going into the specifics of Sleep Science Academy, if there was one, call it a sleep strategy, or maybe it's a daytime strategy that leads to a better sleep strategy, if there's one action that a listener in Deep Wealth Nation could do coming out of this episode that would help them begin to recover their sleep, for recovering their health and then their life and the business, all those other things. If there's one low-hanging fruit, what could that be?
I would say it's prioritizing rest, because rest leads to sleep. And sleep is a form of rest, but there's many types of rest. And I think a lot of founders, specifically people that have big ideas, that are drivers, that are doing big things in the world, that have high stakes, mental rest is probably the area that I see most people deficient in, and that I was most deficient in before I realized that it's mental rest. Like, how do you take mental vacations in your day so that you're not constantly in problem solving mode?
Yeah.
It's such a simple thing, but it really makes a difference for people. And we see it every day in people's sleep.
So let's talk about that for a moment, because it's important. And I'll share something in my early founder days. And as I'm sharing this with you, I feel a little embarrassed sharing it, but I'll put it out there anyways. I just didn't know what I didn't know. And it was an old thing. You hear founders say that they'll sleep when they're dead. In other words, around the clock, or when people are talking about rest or taking it easy. I know for myself, I say, yeah, they're weak. They just don't get it. And so what the science is showing and what you'll tell us is actually it's the opposite. So when it comes to rest and the importance of that, okay, conceptually, I hear what you're saying. Practically speaking, though, what would that look like for a founder during a typical workday?
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone's situation is a little bit different, right? So what that could look like is, I'm not sure who I heard this from. I heard this from someone. He called it nexting, going from the next thing to the next thing. So that could look like not having back-to-back meetings, or if you do back-to-back meetings, that like you only do one back-to-back meeting and then you get 10 minutes on your calendar. And that 10 minutes isn't spent scrolling on your phone or answering emails or doing anything. It literally is doing nothing, breathing, literally just focusing on your breath or taking a walk without technology and just noticing the clouds and the trees and anything that's going to get you out of the mindset of doing and get you into the mindset of being present. It could be as simple as that, like literally taking 10 minutes between tasks to decompress in a real decompressed way, not a cheap decompressed way where you're hopping on social media or trying to get one email in before the next meeting, which we were all guilty of that, right? We're all guilty of it. It's easy when you have the momentum and you have a little space and time to fill that time with things that feel productive, but there's a cost to that. And so that's what it could look like. We teach a lot of techniques, breath and somatic techniques at Sleep Science Academy that are really effective for helping people get into a parasympathetic state quick, because most of the time we're in sympathetic, which just means that we're in fight or flight to some degree throughout most of our day. And that's a lot of the tools that we teach is really just anchoring people into their bodies and into their breath. And so for some people, that works amazing. For other people, it could be meditation. It could be some movement. It's really finding, hey, what works for you, and also being open to experimenting with what that could be for you.
Okay. So you've put some of the foundational things out there. In Deep Health Nation, the takeaway of what we've spoken about so far, and still more to come, but the takeaway here is if we're not getting sleep right, everything in our life suffers. From our health, to our relations with family, to our physical appearance, to the business itself, and life, which should be grand, may not be grand because it all goes back to sleep. So in other words, like we spoke about earlier, Devin, we can be doing all the right things of working out, of eating, supplementation, all those things. If the sleep's not there, we may not get the full benefits of that, which brings me to the question of, okay, I know everyone is different and we're all on our own journey, but generally speaking, and maybe from the lens of a founder. So I'm coming to you, Sleep Science Academy. Okay, yeah, Devin, heard you on the Deep Health podcast. Sign me up. I want to go through the Sleep Science Academy. Big picture wise, can you walk us through what does that really mean in terms of, okay, how much time is this going to take? And depending on where I'm at, and let's take typical founder life, probably not the best sleep, a lot of bad habits along the way that I don't even realize what I'm doing. I don't know what I don't know. Ignorance is not bliss. What's going on behind the scenes of what you're going to be doing with us through the Sleep Science Academy and the coaching and the systems, and how long is it going to take and where we're going to get to with that?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I mean, the beautiful thing about what we do is it doesn't take a lot of time, about 90 minutes a week. That looks like 10 to 20 minutes a day going through the training. And the training is really to give you the information. Information alone isn't useful unless you apply it. And that's where the coaching comes in, because we all need coaches. And Jeffrey, I know you know that, being a coach yourself. I know it because I have a coach. We need the accountability. We need the support. We need somebody to help us gain perspective when we lose it. And so that looks like, again, getting the information. And the information is pretty, like I said in the beginning, there's a system that we understand. Unrest in the day becomes unrest at night. Well, how do I change? How do I start to prioritize rest? What does that look like for me personally? Where am I starting from as far as how much sleep or what medications I'm taking? What does my life look like? So really a big part of the first part of what we do is we create awareness around what actually is going on in someone's life. And how we do that is through inquiry, is through asking questions, is through intake forms, is through measuring data. So we gather all the information around someone's life and lifestyle, and then we're like a mirror. and we show it back to them. Do you realize that you're doing this? Do you see how this is impacting the level of stress, how you're thinking about this thing? Once a client has awareness around what needs to change or could change, then we get to strategy because we can't change, obviously, what we're not aware of. So a lot of times people want to jump right into strategy, like, hey, just tell me what to do. And strategy is so surface level. We go like 3 or 4, sometimes 5 levels below the surface as to what is the thoughts, the beliefs that are driving the behaviors, and what is the current strategy or lack of strategy. So that's where we start. And that we call that our mind phase. So that's looking at stress, that's looking at nervous system stimulation, that's looking at lifestyle, that's looking at really creating all this awareness. Then we get into, okay, now what do we do about it? What techniques, what tools, what strategies are we going to implement just week by week? What's most important this week? For you, it might be something different than another client. So that's where the coaching comes in, is really to know, okay, this is the most important thing for this person this week because this is what's coming up for them. And so there it gets a little bit hard to say it's these things because it depends on the person, it depends on the week, depends on what's coming up for them. But that's the first phase. So we bucket that into the mind phase. Does that make sense?
It does. So what I'm hearing you say, and I love what I'm hearing, okay, no person is the same. So let's take a look at, just like we would in business, okay, what are the KPIs of the business? Where's it at? Where is it not? But you have your own systematic way that I'm providing all the information. You're assembling all that information. Okay, Jeffrey, here's exactly where you are. Here's some gaps. So you're really getting to know, where is Jeffrey as of today, lifestyle wise, stress wise, rest wise, sleep wise, all those other kinds of things.
Yes.
I got that. Okay, so phase one, you now have that information and you have a very clear picture of what's going on. What happens from there?
Yeah. Now, this is when we get into the tools. And those tools, so then we would call this the body phase. So it's looking at how do we realign your system, or we like to use the word recalibrate your physical sleep system through using different tools. And those tools could be mindfulness, they could be breath practices, they could be really understanding the psychology around what's a story and what's a fact. So this is a really powerful exercise that we train our clients on, is to have, most of the time we confuse facts for stories and stories for facts. So we have a whole training on how to get real with what's real. So for instance, I'll give you an example of somebody cut you off in traffic. That's a fact. And then we make a story. This person was trying to kill me. They're an a-hole. We put all of this meaning and story around the facts. We're doing that all day long, unconsciously, and we're confusing our facts for our stories. And there's an impact for that. So this is an example of one of the exercises or the trainings that we would take somebody through to understand what the sympathetic impact of confusing facts and stories is. Does that make sense?
It does. And so while you're talking about that, the term has come up a few times, sympathetic, parasympathetic. Someone in Deep Health Nation who's probably heard of that, but they may not know exactly what that means. So generally speaking, sympathetic, parasympathetic, what is that? Why is that important?
Sympathetic is, you can just say, your stress response. Parasympathetic is your rest response. So most of us, most of the time, are in a slightly stressed activation, hyperarousal. Whether we're aware of it or not, there's a little bit of adrenaline, there's a little bit of cortisol, just looking at emails, answering texts, driving to work, working through a problem, solving a problem in our business. This puts us in a sympathetic state. And that means physiologically that our bodies are releasing certain hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline, that keep us awake, keep us alert, help us solve challenges. Not a bad thing. It becomes bad when we stay there. That's when people start to not sleep. And so we want to relearn how to get into the parasympathetic, which is the opposite. That is where we are relaxed, where we're breathing from our diaphragm. That's when we don't have this sense of we need to rush or running out of time. A lot of people have this sense that they don't have enough time. They need to rush throughout their day. It's like this unspoken operating system.
Mm-hmm.
There's an impact to that. Mm-hmm. So being able to step out of time, even for a minute, and understanding, well, what does that mean? Or how do I do that to get back into a state where your body can actually recover? So you can think of the last vacation that you were on And I know, Jeffrey, you were on an amazing vacation recently, and just maybe that, like a moment where you were just so immersed and so present to the experience with your family and with the meal and with the environment. Most likely in that moment, you're in deep parasympathetic, deep rest. And then we get back into flying, packing the suitcases, and making sure we're there on time so we don't miss the flight. Now we're a little bit in a sympathetic state.
Sure.
Right?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes not so little.
Sometimes not so, especially if we're running late and, 100%.
Yeah.
A lot of people are very disconnected from their body, especially founders, because we're problem solving all day long. So we live most of our life in our head. So how do we get back into our body and actually pay attention to, like, oh, I'm actually feeling a little tightness in my chest or a little tension in my stomach, or it's having this awareness around, oh yeah, there's this sense of I need to rush or hurry up, or something's going to go wrong. I don't feel safe. That's a big one for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Especially entrepreneurs. We don't feel safe until we have 100 million in the bank. And until we have 100 million in the bank, we're not safe. And that feeling not safe puts us in a sympathetic state. That sympathetic state leads us to not be able to fall back to sleep. So this is an example.
Yeah, no, exactly. And Deep Health Nation, we're speaking of travel, we're speaking of the body, the mind, the environment. Deep Health Nation, if you are flying out, I don't know if you're like me, if I'm flying out, I know that the night before, it's not going to be the best sleep, even though I've been doing this for far too long because, okay, I need to wake up in time and I'm an early riser. That's not an issue, but I got to really make sure I'm waking up on time and I'm traveling and it's going to be a different environment. And so it's the body, it's the mind all rolling into one. And so that's where the sympathetic, the parasympathetic, what I'm hearing you say is, okay, hey, life happens. It's not going to be all of one or all the other. That's not real. And our bodies weren't designed for that. And so let's zoom out for a second before we continue with what you're doing with your methodology. And so what I'm hearing you say is, okay, Jeffrey, we're going to do some questions all about you, and we're going to learn what's going on, what's really going on, not what you think is going on, what really is going on. We're then going to take that and develop some kind of a profile for you, Jeffrey, and now apply that with our systems, with our AI, with the gazillions of other people that we worked with. We're going to see where you fit into our system and the gaps and everything else. Now we're going to educate you of what you need to know. And from one educator to another, we're both founders, but we're also educators as well, you and I, Devin. I know that the education part is so important because if I can understand the why, maybe it's placebo effect. I'll take it either way. But if I understand the why, usually the impact is so much more powerful. And so you're sharing, okay, it's maybe 10, 20 minutes a day that you're walking us through of this education and getting all that done. And once you have that done, is it then walking us through whatever happens to be coming up with me through your systems, through your strategies? Okay, Jeffrey, let's align the body, the mind, the environment. We're all going to get them into sync so they're working together and not against each other. How am I doing with that?
You're hired.
Hey, all right.
You are hired. You're nailing it. I so appreciate you. You're so skillful at just pulling out the essence of what's being shared here. Yeah, you nailed it. To sum it up, to put a bow on it, it's recognizing, it's recharging, and it's resting, and it's creating awareness around what's important in the moment so that you can continue to move through your day so that your nights are not impacted by your days and vice versa.
Okay. And so that said, Devin, let's put me under the microscope, an example for Deep Health Nation. Let's talk about today as an example. So behind the scenes, I've been doing a detox, actually a peptide detox. And what can happen, which doesn't always happen, but this time it happened, I will feel some symptoms, some side effects, which in this case, it's been a runny nose the past few days, achy backs. I know something's going on. I'm not worried. My body's doing exactly what it should be. And whatever's there, it's being taken care of. I have this amazing immune system. Terrific. At the same time, though, today I was on another podcast. I know you and I were on this podcast right now. And heading into that, I was feeling low energy, not so great. And the earlier version of Jeffrey, in the early days, I would have powered through that. Okay, I'll have not so much a coffee guy, but I'm a tea guy. So I'll have some tea with caffeine, or I'll have something else just to get me through it. Fortunately, along the way, though, I picked up meditation. And so today I did what I usually do each day. I'm going to round it up. It's not quite 30 minutes, but it's 30 minutes roughly. Let's call it that. I had my 20-minute meditation. And then I did around 7-8 minutes of my heart math breathing. So in less than 30 minutes, I then walked into the interview where I'm being the guest on someone else's podcast. I felt great. I felt recharged. It was as though I had just woken up from a full night of sleep. So what was going on with that? Because I can tell you heading into that, I wasn't feeling so great. I was low energy, a little bit of brain fog, and just don't feel myself.
First and foremost, you had the awareness of what doesn't work. And then you made a conscious choice to use a strategy to shift to actually do something that would be restful and supportive. That's literally what we teach at Sleep Science Academy. So that would be an example of a reset or a recharge. Now, the thing is, you have the awareness to slow down and to actually make that decision and choice because you know what a difference it makes for you. A lot of people do not have that as a understanding yet, where they're just going to give me another cup of coffee, give me an espresso. I want a quick fix. I don't have time to do the meditation, to get a little oxygen to my brain, to move my circulation, to get grounded and centered. They're just bulldozing through. And you can get away with that for a little bit, but eventually it catches up with you. Because the way I look at the body and mind, if the body is a container, like it's a glass, and we're filling up that glass all day long, water is the stress. Eventually, if we don't empty a little bit of that water, it's going to overflow. And now we're experiencing insomnia, anxiety, depression, health issues. And so that would be an example of really consciously pouring a little bit of the water out so that your stress bucket doesn't fill up to then make you sick or make you anxious or have something impact even your health at a deeper level. Like people have cancer and heart attacks and all these things, not just because of stress, but it's a buildup over time of not moving too fast, not resetting, not recharging.
And so going back to that resetting, that recharging, and let's go back to the Sleep Science Academy in terms of what you're doing. So when you really get to know me and now you've educated me, you know where the gaps are, you know what's working, you know what isn't working, you're telling me to either start or stop or keep on doing that. It sounds like what's now happening is you're customizing an approach that works for me. Because I imagine some people, Default Nation, saying, hey, Jeffrey, it's great that you can meditate. Not happening for me. Tried it, been there, done that. Okay, so here, Devin and team, if it's not meditation, you're going to find something else that perhaps can help and
100%.
get me going in that way. And I don't want to confuse simple with simplicity, and I don't want to take the position that everyone is in the same bucket because we're not. That said, there are patterns. Good old Pareto's law, the 80-20 principle. Is it that 20% of these same, some people call them issues or challenges, you and I will call them opportunities, that keep on coming up for most founders that, these 20% of these issues right here, Jeffrey, is 80% of the challenges for most of the founders that we're working with and that I'm speaking with. What would that be? Are there some patterns that you can share with us?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the patterns is looking at this purely from a physiological perspective. So most people think when they're not sleeping that it's something just purely physiological, has the mind, the emotions have no impact. So they're looking, I must be deficient in an amino acid, or my hormones must be off, or right. It's the tangible. And what I find so frequently, it's really the key that unlocks the door is the intangible. And so that's a huge blind spot that we see for so many of our clients, specifically the high performing ones, the ones that are singing at the Grammys. And we work with some really cool people that are high performers. It's that. It's really, they're so focused on they're looking for evidence that they're physically broken when really they need to be looking for evidence that they're not and going into the intangible realm first.
Okay, I really like what I'm hearing. So as founders, I know myself included, I'll just find another supplement. Let me do a deep dive on some research. I'm feeling this. Okay, what's associated with this? And it goes back to, hey, it may not be physiological. It's showing up that way, but the root cause. And so I love what I'm hearing you say is you're getting to the root causes.
Yes.
And oftentimes it's actually less work. It's with more effortlessness and ease that we can welcome some restorative health back into our lives by doing less, taking less, as opposed to, okay, here's a whole other routine I need to add to my life now. Another bottle of vitamins I'm going to stack onto the gazillion others that I'm taking, or this other exercise that I'm already stacking onto my 3-hour-long exercise routine. I'm just making this up here as we go along. But Default Nation, we're getting the point here. Okay. So, wow, such a subtle thing. It's so easy and innocent to overlook, yet it plays such an important role and impact. And we're going to go into wrap up in just a moment here. But Devin, I really want to bring this home from a health perspective because the science is now showing and actually debunking some of the lies and myths that were told to us, because we were told, oh, Jeffrey, don't worry. When you get older, you're going to sleep less and that's normal, and dementia and Parkinson's and, this or that, it's all normal. Actually, it isn't. It's not normal as we get older to be sleeping less, and dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, that also is not normal, but is now being tied directly to sleep or lack of it. So what's going on with that very big picture wise, and not to scare people, to educate of how important sleep is, what's happening?
The reality is our sleep architecture does change as we move through life. So for instance, a toddler needs more sleep than an adult. And you're 100% on point that now the science does show that as we go through age, this common misconception of, oh, we need less sleep and it's not important to sleep is totally BS. It really is. And the reason that people tell themselves that story and make it okay is, well, as we move through life, a lot of times life gets more complicated, more loss, more stress, more life in us. And again, life shows up in our sleep, often as less sleep. And so that's when people make, oh, well, we need, again, depending on the amount of stress, the amount of physical activity, if you're a male, if you're a female, the other aspects of your biology, that all impacts your sleep architecture and how much or how little sleep you need. 8 hours is actually a myth. Not everyone needs 8 hours. Most people need between 7, I would say, and 8.5, depending on where they are in life, their biology, their genetics. And some people can get away with even less. And when I say get away with it, there is a very small population percentage, I think it may be less than 1%, that have a genetic abnormality where they can actually sleep less and they don't have any of the negative impacts, meaning they can sleep between 5 and 6 hours. Everyone wishes they had this. So maybe in the future we can hack it with a peptide. I don't know. But that's the reality is that's less than 1% of the population. Yeah. So really understanding that, to get back to your point, our sleep architecture does change as we go up throughout life. It's important if you're noticing a difference in your sleep quality or your sleep duration. Again, that's the engine check light. Pay attention. What in life needs attention? Don't just tell yourself, oh, I'm getting older and I need less sleep, or waking up to use the restroom. That's fine. But are you able to fall back to sleep after you wake up? Because if you're not, that's not fine.
Yeah.
So you got to really be careful with the stories you tell yourself and the information that you get, because a lot of the information we receive isn't always the most accurate.
And as we've been going through the system today, Devin, I have to share with you the journey from my own sleep and learning what a superpower it is, what to do, what not to do. Had I known about you and had the system way back in the early days, it would have saved me countless hours and dollars and time and effort, because part of the challenge, and you can share Jeffrey on base or off base, it's the pressure, even myself, the pressure I would put on myself. Oh, well, Jeffrey, this didn't happen, so clearly something must be wrong. And I was buying into a myth. Whereas with your coaching, with the system, with what you're doing now with AI and refining it even more, hey, Jeffrey, we got you covered. Ask me any question you want. Yeah, here's what's going on, but let me tell you what's really going on that you probably don't realize. And Deep Health Nation, what's that worth to you, to having that peace of mind where Devin and team and the systems behind the scenes are there to guide you along the way? And before we do go into wrap-up mode, Devin, when it comes to myths, is there one myth that we haven't debunked yet, or even a question I haven't yet asked you that's an important one that you want to get out there for Deep Health Nation? That, okay, hey, I know maybe you heard this, but here's what's really going on. Or, yeah, Jeffrey, we didn't speak about this. It's important, though. Let's quickly talk about that. Anything that comes to mind?
You cannot force and control sleep. So many people find themselves in this position of problem solving and saying, okay, I'm going to take this and then I'm going to sleep. And that creates more focus on sleep, which creates less sleep. Just realizing that and realizing the ways in which you try to control sleep or force sleep if you're not getting it is a massive step in the right direction. Massive. And that is something it's a small thing. It's a little hinge that swings a massive door towards sleep. So anything that you're doing to improve your sleep, it becomes tricky because people put sleep on a pedestal and it deserves to be on a pedestal. But what that does is once you realize it deserves to be on a pedestal, it creates more focus on sleep and more pressure to sleep, which then leads people to try to control sleep. And sleep is not something you force, it's something that happens. And if you're trying to force sleep, it's not going to happen. So I really so appreciate you rounding the conversation out to allow people to understand that, because that is a huge thing we see that keeps people stuck in some cases for decades. Decades.
Wow.
I'm talking
Wow.
decades. Yeah.
So, as an example, somebody gets up to use the washroom at night, and then they're going back to bed. And in their mind, they're saying, okay, I want to sleep now. I should be sleeping now. And they're in bed, and 5 minutes goes by, and 25 minutes, 95 minutes, an hour and 5 minutes goes by, and they're not sleeping. What I'm hearing you say is it's because we're looking to force it, and sleep cannot be forced, as opposed to just getting back to bed. And to what you said earlier, I'm going to rest. I'm going to relax.
Yes.
I'm not paying attention. Next thing we know, we wake back up and it's several hours or the rest of the night later, whatever the case may be. Hey, that was a great night's sleep. Yeah, I got up, did my business in the washroom, but then I got a great night of sleep. Is that the difference, a subtle difference?
It's so subtle and you nailed it. And then the second thing I'll say that I just realized that we didn't touch on is most people spend too much time in bed, not asleep. So often people that are not sleeping well or not sleeping enough, and then they decide, oh, I need to take care of this because it's impacting me now. They end up spending too much time in bed awake. And that is a huge mistake. If you don't want to be awake in bed, if you find yourself awake and your mind's going, you don't want to look at the clock because that sets an internal clock in your mind and body. You just want to feel into what maybe 20, 30 minutes is. And then I actually did this last night. My son, this might be too much TMI here, but I have a young son. He had a blowout, and for all the parents, young parents out there, you know what that is. You probably think back to the time your son or daughter had one of those in the middle of the night. Well, that was my night last night. And so we cleaned them up and get back in bed, and my head starts to go. I'm thinking about this podcast. I'm thinking about all the consults I have today. I feel it's 20 minutes. Okay, I'm out of bed. Got out of bed, went to the couch, not so that I could get back to sleep, but just to remove myself from the bed and bedroom. And I just was with my thoughts, kind of watching them come, watching them go, just resting, and then sleep happened.
Yeah.
And today, here I am. I feel not 100% where I would have been, but I'm pretty good because I was able to fall back to sleep. Now, most people, what they would do without this information is they would stay in bed and they would just be kind of tossing and turning all night long. And then they'd be frustrated because they're tossing and turning. And then they might get angry. And now the adrenaline's coming up. And now finally it's 4:30, 5 in the morning. Screw it. I'm getting up. I'm going to start work. And I'm going to down a cup of coffee because I need some sense of alertness and brain fog. I need cleared. And then that becomes a pattern.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I take it when you got out of bed, you're not turning on the overhead lights, or if there are lights, you have a red light and there's no blue light in it. So you're supporting that. You're getting out of the bed, and however much time out of the bed just to do whatever, get it out of your system, clear the thoughts, and then you're going back into bed. As you're talking about that, it's interesting. There's been some nights where I get up and it's close enough to the waking time. I want to get some more sleep, but it's also close enough. I'm having some difficulties getting back to sleep. I just get up. I start going through the early part of my very morning routine, and then 5-7 minutes of that, and I'm all in dark and I got the red lights on. Geez, I feel tired. I think we're going to go back to bed. And I go back to bed.
Yeah.
And I fall back asleep for another hour or so. And
It's great.
7 minutes, 10 minutes before that, though, oh, geez, I don't think I can sleep. I've been up for a little while. And quickly, before we go into wrap up mode, so we're talking about that. Where do naps play a role and not play a role? So we haven't had the best night of sleep, or maybe we had the best night of sleep. How does a nap fit into this?
Yeah, wow. So this is an important thing for people to hear. So if you don't have insomnia, meaning if you don't have a hard time falling asleep or staying asleep, that's not a pattern for you. And you're getting between 6.5 to 8 hours of sleep, somewhere in that range. Napping is a superpower. Cognitively, there was some pretty cool science. They measured the impact on a nap versus a cup of coffee and how they compare. Napping blew the cup of coffee out of the water as far as cognitive refresh, physical restoration, which obviously we can get into the science around that, but I know we're kind of landing the plane here. It's a huge superpower to be able to nap. Not everybody can nap. So, and this is a sign, if you are somebody listening to this and you're like, oh yeah, I get like pretty good sleep, but I just can't, I'm not a napper. I can't nap. That's probably a sign you're kind of more sympathetic, and you could use some parasympathetic rest during your day. To be honest, that's a sign of, okay, you're probably a little revved and you might not realize it. So if you have insomnia, do not nap. The reason why you don't want to nap is because it reduces sleep pressure. Sleep pressure is a fancy word for this chemical in our body called adenosine that builds up. And caffeine blocks adenosine. So that's why we don't want to have caffeine too late in the day, because it blocks the receptor that builds sleep pressure. How you know sleep pressure is building is you feel sleepy. Okay. So if we nap, what it's doing is it's actually releasing some of the adenosine from the receptors because we're getting into some sleep architecture. And then we might have a hard time falling asleep at night if you're somebody who has insomnia. So if you don't have insomnia and you're a high performer, napping is a superpower. If you do have insomnia, do not nap. It's going to reduce sleep pressure, which is going to make you even harder time sleeping at night.
And would you say, Devin, 20, no more than 30 minutes would be the optimal time for the length of a nap and not more than that?
Yeah. So I recommend setting your alarm for 25 minutes. That gives you about 5 to 10 minutes to fall into sleep. And then you don't really want to get into the deeper cycles of sleep because, Jeffy, maybe you had this experience. I know I have many times. If we don't set an alarm and we fall asleep, you kind of wake up in a deeper sleep cycle. You feel more tired, more foggy. And that's because your body dropped into REM or deep sleep. And we really don't want during a nap, the body to get into the deeper stages of those sleep cycles unless we complete the cycle. So if you complete the 90-minute cycle, so it's either like 20 minutes or 90 minutes. Most people don't have 90 minutes in their day to sleep. So 20 minutes generally is the kind of the sweet spot.
And so, Devin, there's a lot of moving parts here. My big takeaway, and Deep Health Nation, I want you to think about this. Sleep, it's an entire system. It's not just the one thing. And if you think it's the one thing, it likely isn't, and it's putting you down the wrong path. When I can go to Sleep Science Academy with you, the team, it can save me, I heard you say decades. It could save me decades, if not years, of doing the wrong thing. And in a very quick period of time with the best science, the best technology. Also, you've taken from ancient traditions, you've put all that into this one incredible system, and I'm having the help and the assistance needed. You're setting me up for a lifetime of healthy sleep on a go-forward basis in a relatively proven short period of time with a wonderful system, science-backed, centuries of ancient technologies back in the day that are all into this. It's everything. It's the old, it's the new, all in one.
Yes.
That's the main advantage. And I have that peace of mind knowing, hey, someone's got my back.
We actually have a guarantee. We're so confident in our system, and we've taken so many people through this process that we guarantee better sleep. And we do honor our guarantee. So if you follow our system, you show up for the coaching, you do all those things, and we do not put you back to sleep. And I don't care if you're on 5 sleeping medications right now and you haven't slept in 3 decades, we know our system works. You know, it is an investment of time and energy, but when you realize how important sleep is, which hopefully everyone understands that, having listened to this and with other amazing sleep experts out there sharing the science around how important it is, it's so worth it because it really does impact every area of your life. And it's not really about sleep. It's about living life. It's about having the energy to be with your kids, to have that breakthrough idea, to have the energy to enjoy your workouts versus just slog through them, to have your best body and your best mind. That's the result of sleep. It's not something that's just something we do passively every night. It really is powerful, and it unlocks the important areas of our life.
In Deep Health Nation, we are going to go into wrap-up mode, but Devin, I'm going to share this with you. I know we keep saying wrap-up mode very quickly. This is, for me, how I look to sleep. If you look to Mother Nature never does anything unnecessarily. In other words, there's no waste. And so for us, if a third of our life is for sleep, it is absolutely not only important, it's essential. And so with that in mind, what I've changed in my life, Devin, is I work my life around sleep, not the other way around. And sometimes that's tough decisions because, like you said earlier, my goal in life, I want to be there for, God willing, my daughters, my grandchildren, hopefully my great-grandchildren. I don't just want to be there. I want to be there. I want to have my mental faculties. I want to be able to move around and walk around and be mobile and be able to pick them up and run with them and all those other kinds of things. And I know that sleep goes a long way to do that. And so the old Jeffrey, I would do anything and everything. Oh, I'll make an exception tonight, or I'll take that late flight, not a problem. Well, I'd rather stay over in a city and catch a flight the next day than take a late flight. That recently happened. The flight got canceled. Okay, we can put you on. The flight is leaving 8 o'clock at night. I'm like, no way. Just put me on for tomorrow. I'll stay another night. Not a big deal. I protect my sleep. or I'll say no to social activities. And for some, that may be offensive, but for me, it's okay. I'm protecting my health, and this just doesn't work for me. And people, if they really love me, if they know me, they'll be supportive of that. And I explained to my daughters, when you start to make exceptions, when does it end?
Yep.
Of course, there's always exceptions. There'll be some nights where, okay, I'm going to go beyond my usual
Yeah.
bedtime. By and large, though, I can count on my first hand when that happens, and I know what they are, so I ritualize them. And so for me, Deep Health Nation, I want you to think about this. Sleep is not just a nice to have. Let it become a must have, and let sleep help ritualize and really predict what you're doing and what you're not doing in terms of the activities for your life. Before we go into
Great.
wrap up mode, Devin, thoughts about that?
No, I think it's great. The only thing I would be careful with is some people, and this isn't you, but some people, they stop living their life because they're not sleeping. And their whole life becomes around sleep. I'm talking people that really are struggling with sleep. And again, then trying to control it and force it. And the purpose of sleep is so that we can live long life. And protecting it is 100% essential and important. And I think we prioritize and protect what's important. And the thing is that most people don't understand yet, or are understanding now, how important sleep is. And I love that you have boundaries and you have priorities and you can communicate those to the people that care about you, because a lot of times people don't, and they want to. They don't want to go to the cocktail party because they know they're going to be tired and maybe have a drink and it's going to impact their sleep, but they do it anyway. And so again, that's part of the coaching process, is like, okay, well, if you're doing something you don't want to do, what's going on there? Are you doing it to please someone else? Jeffrey, you're like what I consider an advanced soul, somebody who's done a lot of work on themselves and has really high self-awareness. That's really part of the work that I do and our team does at Sleep Science Academy, is help people have this level of awareness about themselves and about their patterns. And sometimes it's interesting. It's not really about sleep. It's like about like boundaries or saying no to things or like people pleasing that then has you exhausted. So it's all these upstream things that then lead to downstream results that are impacting people's sleep. Yeah.
I mean, my goodness, that could be a whole other, not episode, but series of, okay, well, it's impacting your sleep. Why is this behavior happening in the first place? To your point, you're saying yes to these cocktail parties and you're having some alcohol, even though you don't want to, you don't want to be there, you don't
Yes.
want to drink, but you're still doing it anyways. You're people pleasing, and now your sleep suffers, and it's like a domino effect.
Yes.
Interesting. And so, People Nation, maybe your sleep will be fine. It's no boundaries around that. And that's some questions to be asking. And Devin
Yes.
can be the ones to lead you through that. My goodness. Wow, Devin. So much more to think about. So, all that said, we're way over time. It's been time well spent. Let's quickly go into wrap up mode, where it's a tradition here on the Deep Health Podcast. My privilege, my honor. Every guest, I ask the same question. So here we go. It's a fun one. Let me set this up for you. When you think of the movie Back to the Future, you have that magical DeLorean car that will take you to any point in time. So Devin, it's tomorrow morning. This is the fun part. You look outside your window. Not only is the DeLorean car curbside, the door's open. It's waiting for you to hop on in. What you do, you're now going to go to any point in your life, whether it's Devin as a young child, a teenager, whatever point in time it would be. What would you tell your younger self in terms of life lessons or life wisdom? Or, hey, Devin, do this, but don't do that. What would it sound like?
Oh, it's really simple. Trust yourself. It's so simple. In the past, when I haven't trusted myself, and what that means is if something feels like it's out of alignment, don't do it. The cost is not worth, the juice is not worth the squeeze. So yeah, trust yourself, because I really do believe that we all have the answers that we're seeking. We just often ignore the signals.
I love
And
it. Yeah.
yeah, so that's something I'm constantly working on. How do I make the signal stronger and continue just to trust that everything's going to be okay?
Trust yourself. Everything's going to be okay. It's a terrific takeaway, Deep Health Nation. And Devin, someone in Deep Health Nation, they have a question or they want to work with you and the team. Where would be the best place online to reach out and have the conversation?
Yeah, so you can go to sleepscienceacademy.com. That's probably the best. And my email, devin@sleepscienceacademy.com. Happy to help anybody or anyone has questions about what we do. We've covered a lot. And this is honestly, we're just scratching the surface. We would be here for 8 weeks if we really went into it, which we don't have that time here. But yeah, thank you so much for having me, for the work that you do. And I'll just give you a shout out to Deep Wealth. What you put together, it's funny because how you put Deep Wealth together, the intention, the systems, the processes, the support. It's very similar to what we do at Sleep Science Academy as far as from a framework standpoint. And it was so powerful to go through your system and to learn from you and have you be my coach. So anyone that's listening to this, if you haven't already had a conversation with Jeffrey about his program, it's well worth it. The time, the energy, it's really amazing. Not only will it save you money, it'll make you a lot of money because there's a lot of nuggets and things that I just were not in my awareness because I hadn't had the experience or the education that I got. So just throwing that out there as well.
Devin, you're making me blush. Thank you. And Deep Wealth Nation, full disclosure, Devin had gone through the Deep Wealth Mastery Program. That's what he's talking about. And I appreciate that. And I really appreciate, Devin, how you're making a difference out there and sharing with us. You're paying it forward of how to have health as a first wealth with sleep leading the way for that. And all of that said, congratulations, my friend. It's official. This is a wrap. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So there you have it, Deep Wealth Nation. What did you think? So with all that said, and as we wrap it up, I have another question for you. Actually, it's more of a personal favor. Did you find this episode helpful? Have you found other episodes of the Deep Wealth Podcast empowering and a game changer for your journey? And if you said yes, and I really hope you did, I have a small but really meaningful way that you can actually help us out and keep these episodes coming to you. Are you ready for it? The dramatic pause. I'll just wait a moment. Drum roll, please. Subscribe. Please subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast on your favorite podcast channel. When you subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast, you're saving yourself time. Every episode automatically comes to you. And I want you to know that we meticulously craft every one of our episodes to have impactful strategies, stories, expert insights that are designed to help you grow your profits, increase the value of your business, and yes, even optimize your post-exit life and your life right now, whatever you want that to look like. And every time you subscribe and a fellow entrepreneur subscribes, it's a testament to how together, yes, we are changing the social fabric of society. One business owner at a time, one liquidity event at a time. So don't let the momentum stop here. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast channel. You'll never miss an episode. You'll be the first to hear from the top industry leaders, the innovators, the disruptors that are really changing and shaping the business world. And maybe you're commuting, maybe you're at the gym, maybe you're taking a well-deserved break that we spoke all about on this episode. The Deep Wealth Podcast, it's your reliable source for the next big idea that could literally revolutionize your business. So once again, please hit that subscribe button, stay connected, inspired, and ahead of the curve. And again, your next big breakthrough moment, it might just be one episode away. Maybe it was even this episode. So all that said, thank you so much for listening. And remember, your wealth isn't just about the money in the bank. It's about the depth of your journey and the impact that you're creating. So let's continue this journey together. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening to this episode. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much. God bless.